My name is Greg Donalds, and for most of my adult life, I believed I was the kind of man who noticed red flags early. I was 34 years old at the time this story began, living alone in a modest one-bedroom apartment in Mississauga, Ontario, working as a logistics coordinator for a mid-sized import company near the Pearson Airport. My life was quiet, predictable, and, if I'm being honest, lonely in a way that doesn't announce itself loudly. The kind of loneliness that sits beside you at night and pretends to be peace. I had moved to Canada from Atlanta, Georgia, almost 8 years earlier, chasing stability after a long stretch of emotional and financial chaos in my 20s. I wasn't reckless anymore. I didn't party much. I didn't chase women. After a painful breakup that nearly broke my confidence, I promised myself I'd only commit to someone who felt safe, transparent, and emotionally mature. I wanted peace more than passion. Or so I thought. My closest friend in Canada was Ethan Miller, a blunt, observant guy I'd met at work years earlier. Ethan was the type who noticed things people missed, the nervous glance, the inconsistent story, the silence that spoke too loudly. We didn't talk every day, but when he spoke, I listened. That detail matters later. It was during one of those rare weekends when I decided to say yes to life that everything changed. A mutual acquaintance invited me to a small get-together in Scarborough, Toronto, nothing fancy, just food, music, and people from different walks of life. I almost didn't go. I was tired, mentally checked out, and already half committed to staying home with takeout and a movie. But something nudged me out the door. Sometimes, life doesn't shout, it whispers. That was the night I met Kate Carter. She introduced herself with a warm smile and a confidence that felt natural, not rehearsed. Kate was 29, soft-spoken one moment and electric the next. She didn't wait to be noticed, she simply was. Within 30 minutes of arriving, she had learned half the room's names, convinced 2 people to dance, and somehow turned strangers into an audience. She carried herself like someone who had learned early how to adapt, survive, and shine. When we finally sat down to talk, what struck me most wasn't her beauty, it was her voice. She spoke French fluently, comfortably, like it lived in her bones. Curious, I asked how a Nigerian woman spoke French that well. She laughed lightly and explained that her mother was Canadian, her father Nigerian. They met in Lagos, married young, and years later her mother relocated the family back to Canada. It sounded seamless. Plausible. Complete. Kate didn't flirt in the traditional sense. She was direct. If she liked something, she said it. If she didn't, she said that too. There were no emotional riddles with her. No pretending. I remember thinking that night, this woman is refreshing. After years of emotional uncertainty, her clarity felt like oxygen. We exchanged numbers. One number. The relationship unfolded quickly, but not recklessly. Coffee dates turned into long walks. Conversations stretched into midnight. Kate spoke openly about life, struggle, ambition. She talked about family with a mix of affection and distance, as though certain stories had been locked away long ago. I respected her boundaries. I didn't push. About 2 weeks in, I noticed she carried 2 phones. One was an iPhone she used freely around me. The other, an older Android, rarely left her bag. When I asked, she smiled and said, different numbers for different people. She explained that one line was for her Canadian circle, the other for friends back home. She even joked, if you call this one, you're Canada. If you call that one, you're Nigeria. I laughed and let it go. It made sense. Plenty of immigrants do that. But the switch fascinated me. Whenever the Android rang, Kate became someone else. Her accent sharpened. Her words moved faster. Nigerian pidgin replaced her calm Toronto tone. Once, I overheard her say quietly, "I no day outside yet. Call me later." When she hung up, she told me she had to leave early. Her mother wasn't feeling well. I didn't question it. I handed her some cash, kissed her goodbye, and watched her disappear down the hallway. Another day, another call. This time, her voice dropped to a whisper. "Why you go call me now?" she snapped before ending the call. When I asked if everything was okay, she smiled and brushed it off. "Family stress," she said. End of discussion. 3 months into the relationship, I introduced Kate to Ethan during a casual night out downtown. I was proud of her, proud of us. She was charming, articulate, unforgettable. Ethan was polite, but quieter than usual. 3 weeks later, he messaged me. He sent a photo of Kate standing outside a dimly lit bar. "Is this your girlfriend?" he asked. I said yes. "How well do you really know her?" he followed. That question cracked something open inside me. I defended her. Explained her background. Her mixed heritage. Her story. Ethan didn't argue. He simply said, "I know that area. And I know what happens there." That night, doubt sat beside me like an uninvited guest. 2 days later, I found myself standing under a flickering streetlight on Weston Road, telling myself I was only there to prove a friend wrong. I arrived too early. Midnight passed. My legs ached. Nothing happened. By 1 a.m., I convinced myself Ethan had made a mistake. The next evening, I tried again. And that was the night a luxury sedan pulled over. A woman stepped out, adjusting a large wig that hid most of her face. But it didn't hide the way she walked. My heart sank. Because I knew that walk. And in that moment, I realized the story I thought I was living was only the surface of something much darker. I didn't approach her immediately. That's the part people never understand when I tell this story. They assume the moment I recognized Kate, or the woman I thought was Kate, should have rushed forward, demanded answers, dragged the truth into the open. But shock doesn't work like that. Shock freezes you. It plants your feet in place and whispers, "Wait. Watch. Be sure." So I stayed in the shadows on Weston Road, my heart hammering against my ribs, watching the woman I loved become someone else entirely. She stood with 4 other women under a broken streetlight, their laughter sharp and rehearsed. Cars slowed as they passed. Some stopped. When one did, Kate would step forward, lean slightly toward the window, exchange a few words, then walk away if the driver shook his head. The movements were subtle, efficient, practiced. This wasn't someone pretending. This was someone who had done this many times before. Every memory I had of her began to rearrange itself. The late-night exits. The unexplained money. The second phone. The hushed calls. They lined up neatly, like puzzle pieces I had refused to connect. I told myself I would just confirm it. That I would walk closer, see her face clearly, then leave quietly if I was wrong. But deep down, I already knew. When I stepped out of the shadows, she saw me. Her body reacted before her mind did. She turned sharply, walking fast toward a nearby bar, an old place locals knew better than to mess around in. I called her name. Once. Twice. Louder the third time. Heads turned. She didn't. I called her phone. I heard it ring. That sound cut deeper than any argument ever could. She disappeared into the bar, and instinct finally caught up with me. That wasn't my territory. I wasn't built for confrontation in spaces like that. Pride is a dangerous thing, but survival is wiser. I stepped back, my hands shaking, my chest tight, my entire sense of reality collapsing inward. I went home alone. That night, I called her again and again. No answer. I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment we'd shared, wondering which ones were real and which were performances designed just for me. The next morning, I drove to her apartment in North York. A middle-aged woman I'd met once before, introduced to me as a family friend, answered the door. When I asked for Kate, she shook her head. She traveled. Nigeria, she said casually, like this was normal. 3 days passed before Kate finally answered my call. Her voice was calm. Too calm. "That wasn't me," she said immediately, before I could even speak. "I've been in Nigeria with my father." I told her I heard her phone ring. That I was right behind her when she entered the bar. I sent her the photo Ethan had shared with me, the same wig, the same posture, the same unmistakable walk. There was a long silence. Then she laughed. Not nervously. Not defensively. She laughed like someone who had decided the truth no longer mattered. "Deal with your miserable life," she said, and hung up. That was the last time we spoke. For weeks after, I walked through my days like a man underwater. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just existed. I went to work. I nodded at conversations. I ate without tasting food. What hurt most wasn't the betrayal, it was the realization that the relationship itself had been real only to me. I replayed everything, searching for the motive. Was it money? Security? Loneliness? Control? Or was it something more complicated, something human? One evening, Ethan came over. We sat in silence for a long time before he finally said, "You didn't deserve that." I nodded, but the words didn't land. I wasn't angry at her anymore. I was angry at myself. Angry for loving without questioning. Angry for mistaking confidence for honesty. Angry for believing that someone so open could be hiding an entire life. I thought the story ended the night Kate told me to deal with my miserable life. That's how most people would have closed the chapter, clean cut, no backward glance, lesson learned. But life rarely respects clean endings. It prefers loose threads, unanswered questions, and quiet moments that force you to sit with yourself longer than you planned. Weeks turned into months. Spring arrived in Ontario, and the city softened again, patios reopened, laughter returned to the streets, couples held hands like nothing bad had ever happened to anyone. On the outside, I blended back in. On the inside, something in me had shifted permanently. Not broken, just rearranged. I became quieter. More observant. I started noticing how many people around me were living double lives, not in dramatic ways, but subtle ones. The colleague who joked all day and cried in his car before going home. The neighbor who smiled politely but never invited anyone in. The woman at the cafe who flirted lightly with customers but stared blankly at the wall once her shift ended. Kate hadn't been an exception. She had been a mirror. One evening, months after everything ended, I received a message request on Facebook from an unfamiliar account. No profile picture. Just a name, Amma J. I almost ignored it. Something told me not to. The message was short. "You don't know me, but I knew her. Kate. She talked about you once." My chest tightened. Amma explained that she had met Kate years earlier through mutual friends, women who drifted between countries, jobs, identities. According to her, Kate wasn't always on the streets. She had tried school. Tried normal work. Tried love once before me. But every attempt collapsed under the weight of responsibility, family pressure, and expectations no one ever taught her how to carry. "She liked you," Amma wrote. "Not because of money. Because with you, she felt normal." That word again. Normal. Amma didn't ask me for anything. She didn't defend Kate. She didn't excuse the lies. She just said something that stayed with me long after the conversation ended. Some people don't know how to leave survival mode once they've learned it. That sentence reframed everything. I finally understood something that had haunted me since the beginning, not just about Kate, but about myself. I had fallen in love with her certainty, her boldness, her clarity. What I didn't realize was that those traits had been sharpened by necessity, not peace. Confidence born from survival looks convincing, but it doesn't always come with honesty. Sometimes it comes with armor. And I had mistaken armor for openness. I also had to confront my own quiet motivation. I hadn't just wanted love, I had wanted control. Safety. A relationship that felt uncomplicated, where I could relax into someone else's strength without questioning its source. I didn't ask hard questions early on because I liked the answers I was already imagining. Love didn't blind me. Comfort did. That realization hurt more than discovering her secret life. Over time, I stopped wondering whether she ever truly loved me. That question lost its power. Instead, I focused on what the experience had taught me, about boundaries, about curiosity, about the danger of romanticizing resilience without understanding its cost. I learned that people can be warm, generous, magnetic, and still be hiding wounds so deep they don't even know how to name them. I learned that honesty isn't just about telling the truth when asked, it's about allowing yourself to be seen when it's uncomfortable. And most importantly, I learned that love doesn't require you to abandon discernment. I don't regret meeting Kate. She didn't ruin me. She refined me. Today, I still believe in love, but I no longer rush toward it without listening closely. I ask better questions. I notice inconsistencies. I don't ignore the quiet voice that says, "Pay attention." As for her, I don't know where she is now. Maybe she found another version of normal. Maybe she didn't. That part is no longer mine to carry. What I carry instead is this. Some people enter your life not to stay, but to teach you how to see more clearly, yourself, others, and the space between truth and illusion. And once you've learned that lesson, you don't chase closure anymore. You become it. This experience taught me that love doesn't always fail loudly. Sometimes, it whispers warnings we choose not to hear. I want to know what you think. Was she wrong for living a double life, or was she just trying to survive? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. And if this real-life experience story leave you thinking long after the video ends, subscribe to the channel. There's another life experience story coming.